You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
There are some bills that are going through that we wanted to talk about, and one. So the first one that I wanted to talk about, which really grinds my gears, and especially the way that I hear it presented here on the station most of the time. I talked to Dale about it on Thursday morning. It was SB 30. What this bill does is, the crux of the bill is it makes it more difficult for workers to prove that their employer behaved negligently. Okay, the proponents of the bill are telling you it doesn't protect negligence. It doesn't. It ties to health guidelines. Blah 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 blah. And like, sure, that's the text. The text of the bill says that, but right below that, it increases the burden of proof from preponderance of evidence to clear and convincing, or clear and compelling. I can never remember. But it increases the burden of proof. So functionally, literally, factually, if you have a negligent employer, it is more difficult to hold them accountable than it was Wednesday before Governor Ivey signed this bill into law. There's a couple other problems with it. One is that it does not tie to federal health guidelines. It ties to local and state guidelines. Now, there's not a,
which we all know is a joke.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't believe that there's just a whole lot of difference in there. But if we want to actually say we're going to tie it to health guidelines, let's tie it to all of them so that we've got all of our bases covered. Secondly, the bill is not actually consistent. If you read the text of the bill, which I encourage everyone to do, then there are two places where it sets forward these liability protections. In one place, it ties it to local and state public health guidance. In the second, it does not. It does not tie to local and state public health guidance in the second place. And Alabama Arise, which is a very good group, everybody should follow their work. Follow Robin Hayden on Twitter. We talked to her on a midweek live stream a couple of weeks ago now. They said that they reached out to a bunch of trial lawyers, and they said, could this be interpreted as giving blanket immunity? Could it be interpreted as they don't have to actually prove that they followed public health guidance because it's inconsistent? And the trial lawyers said, yes, this bill, if it is passed as written, which it was, there was no amendments on the floor and no amendments prior to Governor Ivey signing it. So it is the bill that we talked about, Robin and I, on our live stream a couple weeks ago. I encourage everyone to watch it. The bill that was signed is inconsistent. It has inconsistent language, and it does not consistently tie the boss's behavior to public health guidelines. And so trial lawyers believe that you could easily interpret that, and a defendant could make a case that they didn't actually have to follow public health guidance.
You're being too nice. I mean, the fact that you use the word inconsistent with Senator Orr, because it's Senator Orr that wrote this bill, it's very consistent, and anybody that deals with contract language understands when there's ambiguity in the contract language,
it goes to the boss.
Yep, and well, not just the boss. I mean, look, it's a lose-lose situation. They gave the workers absolutely nothing to fall back on. For example, and there was something that I tweeted about earlier in the week. For example, you've got literally hundreds and thousands of elderly workers that may be at Walmart, that may be at some of your grocery stores, that's interacting with the public on a daily basis. The bill forces them to continue to coming into work regardless of what they think, or quit, as opposed and a lot of these workers are supplementing their income because we don't have a robust Social Security system to take care of workers once they decide to retire. They're supplementing their income with these jobs, whether it be part-time or full-time, and instead of putting some type of fallback and saying if you believe it's unsafe, then you can continue to claim unemployment insurance, or they will have to bring you back as an employee once everything is and it speaks to the fact of what Republicans in this state have consistently
and Democrats,
done.
Democrats voted for this bill than voted against it. What the hell?
It speaks, I mean, you're right. It speaks to what we have seen in this state as far as legislation goes, is always looking out for the business and not giving a damn about the small working people Anywhere.
Well,
anywhere.
and you know, like folks that are
now,
listening,
Chris England. Let's be clear.
Chris England, that's
Chris England
and like 3 others.
Sister down in I think Mobile. I can't
Figures.
No, it wasn't Figures. I think it was Karina. I can't remember her name because of course we're not from the South, so we don't keep up with representatives in down
4
South.
Democrats in the House, 1 Democrat in the Senate.
Yeah.
5 Democrats total. We've got 30-something in our state legislature, and 5 of them voted against it. And Anthony Daniels, he's supposed to be the House Minority Leader of the Democratic Party in the House. Apparently he supported it. Now, did he go down there and actually vote for it and put his money where his mouth is? No, he was absent during that vote, so that way, presumably, he doesn't have to take the flack for it later. But apparently, he's been coming on this station and promoting this bill. But I mean, you know, he owns a business, so there you go. But you know, folks, I want you to think like critically about this. These bills are being pushed all across the country. All across the country. They're being pushed by powerful interests, corporate lobbying groups. They're saying we need this protection in order to be able to function because frivolous lawsuits from our greedy and lazy workers are going to make us bankrupt if we don't get these protections. All these powerful groups, you have not seen nor heard one case, not even one case that they're putting forward and saying, this is the proof case, this is why we need this legislation. There's not one instance of a worker filing a frivolous lawsuit that they can point to, not one instance of a consumer filing a frivolous lawsuit that cost them money and made them go bankrupt. Not one. We've got numerous cases of people dying. Yeah, no evidence that workers are engaging in frivolity with regards to their safety or consumers with regard to their safety. There has been no case put forward by the business community for the necessity of this legislation. None whatsoever. And they expect us, the workers, the consumers, to believe that this is in all of our best interest. It's horse crap. It's horse crap, okay? They don't care about you. And here's the bottom line. This is what we've been saying on Twitter. You know, like, the more Democrats voted for this than against it, okay? So politicians aren't going to protect you. You cannot count on the politicians in Montgomery to protect you. Republican or Democrat, the best way to ensure that your safety is protected at work with regards to the coronavirus or anything else is to form a union and get a contract, get it in writing, and that way you've got a real mechanism to hold them accountable. Because if you're reliant on the laws that are passed in Montgomery by the Republican Party and by the Democratic Party, you are not going to be safe. Yep. That's the bottom line. You just can't. You can't count on these people. You can't count on them. You've got to stand up for yourself. You got to stand up for your brothers and sisters on the job, in your community. That's the way to make your life better, to ensure your safety, to ensure that you've got a good compensation, a good retirement, good health care. I mean, you know, look, we talk politics and we talk who's good politicians, bad politicians. Chris England has been against this and he's been forceful against it, and that's good. I appreciate Chris England and the people that were against it and that fought against it. I very much sincerely do, but they don't have enough power to protect us. Yeah. We've got to protect ourselves. Yeah.
I mean, you know, and yeah, there's so much to look at over the past year with people dying, with the workers dying in South Dakota at the meatpacking plant, at the Tyson plant, where the managers was gambling on who was going to get it, how many people were going to get it.
Yeah, I mean, somebody asked me, where's the evidence that businesses are putting their employees in harm's way? And I'm like, what? Are you like, do you live in the same world that the rest of us do?
They live in a bubble.
It's insane.
This is what happens when you watch Fox News every day. Those things aren't getting reported like what we see. But I mean, basically they've tied the workers' hands and said, you know, we're not going to allow you to do anything that would injure these businesses, even at the risk of your death. Yeah, and that's not hyperbolic. That is absolute fact. We've seen it for the past year, And we're going to continue seeing it so long as this is surrounding us, and it's going to get worse because of legislation like this. I looked at it, I read through it. I didn't read like in depth, but I honestly question if this is even constitutional. Can the state of Alabama take away a constitutional right of the redress of grievances?
Yeah.
I don't know that it can, but the problem is, it goes back to the same thing that it always has. If you don't have the money to fight it, then there's nothing that you can do. Workers simply don't have the money to appeal these cases through the state judicial system, to the state Supreme Court, and on to the U.S. Supreme Court. They know that there's no way that anybody can come up with the funds to fight this.
Yeah.
All you can hope for is maybe the ACLU will take up a case and push it forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's really concerning, You got to do a union about it. I mean, that's the you got.
It goes back to the same thing we're always saying: build worker power. Don't rely on politicians.
And the
we've
more
relied on politicians for entirely too long.
And the more that we build worker power, the more that we're going to be able to, like Jonah said, contest this in the political arena. When we have a union density rate in the state of 15, 20, 30% again, then politicians are going to have to start paying attention to workers. And when they have to start paying attention to workers, then you're not going to get terrible legislation like this passed. I mean, there's some other legislation. You've got that wiretapping bill. These supposedly small government conservatives want the government to be able to, surveil you at their whim if they reckon that you're trafficking in drugs.
The same ones that's being censored.
Yeah,
those same ones that hate big tech, but they don't mind wiretapping.
Yeah, I don't know. And there's this one about the transgender youth that is really, really problematic. Because I don't think people understand like the transgender health care that actually happens when the person is a minor. For one, nothing is given to a minor that is actually irreversible. The puberty blockers are not irreversible; they're completely reversible, and those are only given after like tens and tens of months of consultation with professional therapists, and they're going to make this kind of health care illegal, and people could go to prison for this. There was a police officer that actually testified against it that has a transgender daughter, and he said, you're asking me to put cuffs on my heroes, and that was a really heartbreaking testimony. And it also makes it required by law for a healthcare professional or an educator or a counselor to tell a child's parents if the child expresses any inclination towards being transgender. And we know here in Alabama that can really put people in danger. There are people that are like, people are still in Alabama kicked out just for being gay. Made homeless. Like this is, and to make educators bring that to their parents' attention without the proper thinking through it, it's just not safe. It is not safe at all. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
So we're just going to wrap up talking about some of the other legislation. Not all of it's bad. They passed a coronavirus tax relief, which says that Alabama taxes are not going to be taken from the relief checks and from the unemployment stimulus, which is good. That is great. I support that. That's good stuff. A not good thing that they're doing that is just really weird is they're making the Star Spangled Banner be played in schools once a week. That's so weird. And I'm not like an anti-patriotic person. I'm actually much more patriotic than a typical like lefty. I fly a flag outside of my duplex. I actually, I bought the flag. I installed it myself. I wear.
What?
Yeah. I bought the flag, installed it myself. Drilled into the brick there. And that's because, I reckon that, my sense of America and Alabama is that, we have a history of racism and fascism and patriarchy, down to our roots, right? It is in the DNA of America. But also in the DNA of America is the revolutionary spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, the Black Panthers, the Young Patriots Organization, the Rainbow Coalition, Eugene Debs fights for justice and equality and fairness and worker power also go down to the roots of America. And so, like, I think that legacy is good. And, you know, I think that sometimes folks on the left maybe we stress the bad and we kind of forget the good, and we forget that it's all tangled up in the same legacy. And so we can, you know, I think we can be proud of the legacy of the United States, and I am, but like, and like it's weird that the Star Spangled Banner is like the first thing that comes into my mind. A lot of times I'll kind of idly like just sing a tune, and the Star Spangled Banner is like the first thing that comes to my mind. So I just run around my house singing Star Spangled Banner. But like making people do things like that's just weird. Like, it's weird to me. I have never understood the inclination to do that. Never understood the inclination to like force people to do things that they don't want to do. And it's so weird to me. I can't wrap my mind around it. It's weird. It's like this kind of authoritarian mentality. Like, we've got to control the way people think. We've got to control the way people feel. And I'm just not about that. Like, if I've got an idea that I reckon is good, you know, I want to win in the battle of ideas. I want to win in the marketplace of ideas, so to speak. And these authoritarian kind of people, like, they want to, like, you know, force these thoughts into our heads and force patriotism into people's hearts, and you can't do that. And forcing it on people. You
can, but I mean, you can. They are.
Yeah, well, they're trying, but I mean, and they can make people do like the physical things, but I don't think you can. I think that forcing people to do that actually does harm to putting the pride of country in your heart. It makes you less. It makes you less inclined to be proud of your country, I think, when you're forced to show this symbolic patriotism and it doesn't actually come from your heart. It's like the same with church, you know, like you can't force real Christianity or a real religion on somebody. Like, it's got to come from their heart. And I think generally Christians kind of understand that. But a lot of times they kind of lose that when it comes to patriotism. They reckon that they can just force people to think a certain way, and it doesn't. I don't think it doesn't work like that.
Well, there's a reason, and I'm very you know, I've said it numerous times. There's a reason I don't use Nazi and fascism on our show much, because it's so overused by the liberals, the liberal media, the Democrats in general. But there's a reason why they're using that term as well, and it's because of laws like this, where you see a right-wing legislature trying to push nationalism on everyone. And I'm not, and like you, I'm not against the Star Spangled Banner. I'm not against prayer in school. There's never been a ban on prayer in school. Anybody that wants to pray in school can pray in school, but to force people to pray in school, or to force people, I mean, it's at what point do you decide which prayer is right? You know, the Hail Satan documentary proved the point that when you start opening the door up to these things, then all of a sudden it opens the door up for anybody else to do the same thing, and it's terrible. It sets terrible precedent, because at some point, right now, everyone believes that this is a Christian nation, and I'm not saying that it's not, but at some point you lose that popularity, and then what happens? Well, then are you going to be forced to pray somebody and nothing against Jewish people, but are you going to be forced to pray to a Jewish God? Are you going to be forced to recite the menorah and things like this? Yeah,
well, I mean, even in a Christian majority country, you're going to have Islamic people in your schools, you're going to have Jewish people in your schools, you're going to have pagans in your schools, and like obviously we would balk at you know, about being made, no matter who it is. Yeah, being made to listen to these things. Like, obviously no one's going to stop Muslims from praying in school, and we need to make space for that. We need to make space for Christians to pray in school. I remember studying the Bible during my breaks in school, in high school at some points, and like no one ever got on to me for that. But like forcing this onto people is just so weird, and we've got to get out of that authoritarian kind of mentality. It's just real weird. Folks, we are going to be back next week. This is the Valley Labor Report. Make sure you're following us online. So thanks for tuning in, folks. We appreciate your time. If you want to see what we're up to throughout the week, get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/The Valley Labor Report. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at Jacob M_AL. David is on Twitter at Radical Unionist. That's spelled RADICL Unionist. If you missed part of the show and want to go back and watch it later, you can search YouTube for the Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we clip segments throughout the week. That way, if there's just one thing that you were interested in, you can watch that without having to watch the whole show. We do upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps. So, to see if we are on your listening platform of choice, you can go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe. We have a website, thevalleylaborreport.org. And if you appreciate our work and want to help us stay on the air, consider throwing us a couple dollars a month on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. And one more thing before we get started to the show, the North Alabama DSA has a necessities drive every Saturday at the IBEW Union Hall on Clinton Avenue across from Campus 805 and Yellowhammer Brewing from 3 to 5 p.m. This Saturday and every Saturday. So bring PPE, blankets, clothes, non-perishable food items to the North Alabama DSA's necessities drive this Saturday and every Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m. at the IBEW Union Hall on Clinton Avenue. The donations will be sent to the Manor House.